2 generations ago, almost every American family knew how to feed itself. 2 generations later, most of us walk into the grocery store for everything. That quiet skill your grandparents had never got passed down to you. I was the same when I started. I planted what looked good in the backyard, not what fed us. That's the first mistake almost everyone makes when they decide to take food security seriously in 2026. And 2026 is the year a lot of people are finally taking it seriously. You can see it at the checkout line every week. Grocery prices haven't come back down, the staples your family actually eats keep climbing, and most households are quietly cutting items from the cart that used to be normal. This video isn't about predicting what comes next, it's about what to do this year while the pressure is already here. You don't need acres. You don't need a homestead. You need the right 5 moves, in the right order, in the backyard you already have. 5 emergency steps to start this week. The 5th one, almost no gardening channel will tell you about, because it doesn't look like gardening at all. It might be the most important step of the 5. Before we get into them, take a second to subscribe if you haven't yet. This channel is built for people who want their backyard to feed them, not just decorate the yard. There's a lot more coming. Now, let's get into it. The first step is the one that wastes more time than any other. Stop planting food that doesn't feed you. Walk through almost any backyard garden in America right now and you'll see the same thing. Tomatoes climbing up cages, cucumbers everywhere, a row of lettuce, maybe some peppers. It looks productive. It feels productive. But if you weighed what comes out of that garden over a season and asked how many days it could feed a family, the answer is uncomfortable. Tomatoes and cucumbers are mostly water. A pound of lettuce gives you almost nothing in calories. You could eat 27 pounds of cucumbers a day and still be hungry. Nobody is going to do that. So why is everyone planting like that's the goal? Because that's what hobby gardening looks like. And hobby gardening is not the same thing as feeding a family. Food security comes from calorie-dense crops. Take potatoes, a 15-pound bag from a single 5-gallon container in a small corner of the yard. The first time I grew potatoes, I remember tipping the bucket over and staring at the pile on the ground, because I'd never thought of my backyard as something that could produce a pile of food. Then winter squash, like butternut or kabocha or pumpkin, the kind that sits on a shelf in your basement for 6 months and feeds you in February when the garden is dead. Dry beans, like pinto or black, store for years. Onions and garlic give you months of flavor and nutrition from a small bed. Sweet potatoes, too, if your climate allows. Nothing produces more food per square foot with less effort. This is where most people go wrong. Plant a single 30-foot row of potatoes instead of 3 more tomato plants, and you've multiplied what your backyard can do for your family by something like 10 times. The tomato is fine, keep 1 or 2 for the kitchen, but the backbone of the garden has to shift toward food that fills a plate, not food that decorates one. Take a minute and look at your own backyard right now, even just in your head. Be honest. How much of what you're already growing would feed your family if the store wasn't an option next month? That brings us to step 2. No matter how good your vegetables get, you still need protein, and protein is where most backyards fall apart. Lock in fast protein and do it in a way that fits the space you have. Most people hear protein and immediately picture chickens. Chickens are great, but chickens have rules. A lot of cities and counties have bird limits, rooster bans, and setback requirements. Some allow them, some don't. So before chickens, look at the most overlooked option in backyard protein: quail. Quail are tiny. A coop the size of a coffee table holds 6 birds. They go from egg to laying in about 6 to 7 weeks, and from egg to a meat bird in about 9. Most jurisdictions don't even regulate them because the rules haven't caught up. If you have a corner of a patio, you can raise quail. The first time we collected eggs from our quail, I remember being surprised at how fast it adds up. 6 little birds, and suddenly you're pulling 4 or 5 eggs out of the coop almost every morning. It's the kind of small daily harvest that changes how the rest of the kitchen works. If you have more space and your code allows it, point-of-lay hens are the next move. Skip the whole chick stage. Buy hens that are already a few months old and weeks away from laying eggs. You go from 0 protein to fresh eggs in your kitchen in a couple of weeks, not 6 months. Between quail for the smallest spaces and hens for backyards with more room and friendlier rules, Almost every American household has a path into backyard protein that fits where they actually live. The point isn't to pick both. Pick the one that fits your space and your local rules, and start there. Eggs every morning, or quail in the freezer in 2 months, will change how you think about depending on the grocery store. You may get tired of eggs. That's fine. Tired of eggs is better than empty shelves. Step 3 is where the wheels usually fall off, and not because the work is hard, because the goal is wrong. Plant for part-time self-sufficiency and let your grocery receipts tell you what to grow. Almost everyone who tries to become self-sufficient sets the same impossible target. Grow enough food to last 365 days. That target crushes more new gardeners than bad weather ever did. The realistic version is what I'd call part-time self-sufficiency. You don't try to feed yourself all year. You pick a window and a crop, and you own that window completely. Salads from April through November, off one raised bed and a packet of cut-and-come-again seeds. Onions for the entire fall and winter, off one good planting in spring. Garlic for 10 or 12 weeks, off one row in October that takes care of itself until summer. Kale from June through the first hard freeze, sometimes longer. Fresh herbs like parsley and dill and cilantro for half the year, replacing the little plastic packets that cost $3 each at the store. Now, here's the trick most people miss. Don't guess what to plant. Pull your last 3 months of grocery receipts. Highlight the 5 vegetables you buy the most. Plant those. The first time I did this exercise, I was a little shocked. I was buying way more onions and way less of the trendy stuff than I'd assumed, and I'd been planning a garden around the wrong food for years. If you buy a bag of onions every week, you need to grow onions. If you buy bagged salad twice a week, you need salad greens. If you never buy eggplant, don't plant eggplant just because the seed packet looked nice at the garden center. Receipts are honest. Plans on paper are not. They're how you find out what your family eats, not what you think they eat, and they cut your planning down to the 5 or 6 crops that replace what you're buying. There's another reason this matters in 2026, and it's not just food security, it's money. The average American family spends somewhere between $400 and $600 a month on groceries, and a meaningful slice of that is the vegetables and herbs you can grow in a single raised bed. A bag of bagged salad runs $5 or $6 now. A pack of fresh herbs is $3. A bulb of garlic is over $1. If your receipts show you buying those same items week after week, the bed you put in this spring pays itself back inside one season and keeps paying after that. Food security and grocery savings end up being the same conversation in 2026, and most people don't notice that until they actually run the numbers. So here's a question. What do you think the 5 things on your own receipt would be? I'd bet good money most of them aren't tomatoes. Which brings us to step 4. Growing food is only half the system, the other half is keeping it. Build a simple preservation setup before your first big harvest comes in. This is where almost every new backyard gardener loses the war. The garden produces beautifully in July and August. The kitchen counter overflows. The neighbors get bags of zucchini. Then January arrives and there's nothing left, and the family is right back at the grocery store. The harvest fed you for 2 months and disappeared. That's a garden hobby with a long off-season. Most people don't realize this part. Fermentation is older than canning, older than freezing. It's the way humans kept food for thousands of years before electricity existed, and it's almost been forgotten in 1 generation. It's also the cheapest preservation method on the planet. A jar, salt, and a vegetable. That's it. You don't need a basement cellar like the Homesteaders show on YouTube. You need 3 simple things. First, a freezer with a system. Flat-bagged kale, pre-portioned chopped onions, peppers in ready-to-use bags, sauce frozen in jars. Most kitchens already have a freezer that could hold 3 or 4 months of harvest if it were organized instead of chaotic. Second, a small fermentation routine. Sauerkraut from 1 cabbage, garlic dill pickles from a single cucumber harvest, a jar of fermented hot sauce. The first batch of kraut I made tasted off and I almost threw the whole thing out. Turned out I'd used the wrong salt, the iodized kind from the supermarket, and once I switched to plain pickling salt, it worked every time. That kind of small mistake is normal. Don't let it stop you. Third, a basic dehydrator or even just sheet pans in a low oven. Herbs, tomato slices, apple rings, sweet potato chips. A pound of fresh herbs in July becomes a year of seasoning if you dry it. Pick one method and start there. Most people try all three at once and quit. Master one this season, add the next one next year. That's how a kitchen becomes a food storage system without anyone noticing. Now we get to step 5, the one almost no gardening channel will tell you about because it doesn't look like gardening at all. But this is the move that turns a backyard into food security, and skipping it is what leaves people exposed in the exact moment they thought they were prepared. Stock a 90-day pantry bridge. Nobody explains this part. A backyard food system takes time to mature. Fruit trees take years. Beds take seasons to build their soil. Birds take weeks to start laying. Skills take a year or two to get good. Anyone who tells you that you can plant in March and be self-sufficient by August is selling you something. The honest timeline is 12 to 24 months from a serious start to a backyard that meaningfully feeds your family. And in that window, that 12 to 24-month gap, anything can happen. Prices can spike, a bad season can wipe out a crop, a supply disruption can hit the very things you haven't grown yet. That's where most people get caught. They start the garden, feel good, and have nothing in reserve while the system is still growing up. The bridge fixes that. 90 days of the staples that don't grow well in most backyards anyway. White rice, 50 pounds in food-grade buckets, stores for decades. Dry beans, 25 pounds, almost no degradation over years. All-purpose flour and rolled oats. Salt, and buy more than you think, because salt is what makes preservation work. Cooking oil, a simple multivitamin. Coffee if you drink it. None of it is dramatic. You can do the entire 90-day bridge in a single weekend trip and a couple $100. Once it's there, the pressure comes off everything else. You can start the garden calmly, raise the birds without panic, take the time to learn preservation properly because you have a runway underneath you. This is the step that separates a backyard hobby from food security, and it's the one nobody mentions because it isn't romantic. It isn't homesteading content. It's just the move that keeps you steady while everything else you're building catches up. Step back and look at all 5 together for a second, because the order matters more than any single step. Step 1 shifts what you grow toward food that feeds a family. Step 2 locks in protein quickly. Step 3 gives you realistic targets driven by what you already eat. Step 4 keeps the harvest from disappearing in January. And Step 5 protects the whole thing while it's growing up. Take any one of them on its own and you've got a piece. Stack them in order, even slowly, and you've built something most American families haven't had in 2 generations. A household that doesn't depend entirely on a grocery store to eat. You don't have to do all of this in a weekend. You probably can't. But you can start one of them this week. Pull your receipts. Make the shopping list for the bridge. Order seed potatoes. Look up your local code on quail. One small move this week beats a perfect plan you never start. If this was useful, hit the like button so it reaches more people who are worried about the same things you are. Subscribe so you get the next videos in this series, because we're going deeper into each of these steps in the weeks ahead. And in the comments, tell me which step you're starting with. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. I read them, and I'm curious where most of you are landing. Honestly, I'd start with Step 5 today. The bridge takes one weekend and a few $100s, and it's the one move that gives you the calm to do everything else right instead of rushing it.